Good morning, friends, and welcome to Unity of San Luis Obispo. We are an inclusive spiritual community. We seek and affirm the good in all people and in all life. We like to think of ourselves as trans-denominational. Those of you who are watching on live stream, thank you for being here. You can tune in to our Facebook anytime throughout the week. You can share. We'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to get your thumbs up and to know that you're there and to know that you are being blessed by our offering of joy and love and the ever-present Spirit of God within all of us. So thank you all for being here. And we want to talk today about something that we have used for years and years with a different terminology. We have called that the 4 agreements. And now we get a chance to call it the 5 agreements. Don Miguel Ruiz, his son, Don Jose Ruiz, have compiled these agreements over the years. The 4 agreements have been extremely popular. They come from a tradition called Toltec wisdom, and yet the wisdom is universal, isn't it? There is a wisdom that runs through the mystical aspect of every religion. And so that's why I like to think of us as trans-denominational, because rather than sticking to the tenets of a specific denomination, we like to take all of the ancient truths that come from every religion and feel that everybody belongs to one human family. We are thrilled to recognize that unity of spirit and to work toward recognizing diversity as an aspect of unity. Diversity within unity. Because remember, unity is not uniformity, but unity is a compilation of all the incredible and wonderful differences coming together in one great harmony. So here are the 5 agreements, formerly known as 4. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. Always do your best. And be skeptical, but learn to listen. And so today, we're going to be talking about the first 2 of the 5 agreements. But before we do, let's ask Brett and Matthew to share their music today. And so we give thanks. We also want to honor and celebrate Brett's birthday. We didn't make an announcement in time, but there's always time for a wonderful birthday. So we just want to thank you for your love, your talent, your gifts, and we bless you always.
Thank you, Leona. Thank you. You got to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch onto the affirmative, don't mess with Mr. In Between. You got to spread joy up to the maximum, bring gloom down to the minimum. Have faith or pandemonium, liable to walk upon the scene. To illustrate my last remark, Jonah is the whale, Noah in the ark. What did they do just when everything looked so dark? And they said we better accentuate the positive, and we'll eliminate the negative. We'll latch on to the affirmative, don't mess with Mr. In Between, no. Don't mess with Mr. In Between. accentuate the positive, and it would be good to eliminate the negative. Go ahead and latch on to the affirmative, and don't mess with Mr. In Between. They gotta spread all that joy up to the maximum. You can get a little bit of brain glued down at a moment. Have faith, a pandemonium is gonna walk and run up onto that scene to illustrate that last remark. Jonah in the whale and Noah there in the ark. What did they do when everything looked so dark? Well, they said, man, we better accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative. Don't mess with Mr. In Between. Don't mess with Mr. In Between. No, don't mess with Mr. In Between.
Wow, I loved it. That was just great. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Brett. Love the song, love your interpretation. And we also want to honor Matthew because he is the recipient of a music scholarship this year in his first year. His first year at Cal State Long Beach in the Bob Cole Conservatory of Music. He's studying jazz, and his instrument is bass. He plays bass guitar, and this next year he'll be learning piano. So this is really, really, really exciting. Thank you so much. So let's get back to the 5 agreements, and let's focus on the first one. Be impeccable with your word. Speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Uh-oh. There's one. Let me start again. Speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or gossip about others. Use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love. Okay, so first let's identify word. Obviously, when we say word, we think about the words that we speak, but the creative word with a capital W that is referred to in Scripture is the creative word of God, the presence and activity of God. It's called the Word with a capital W, or Logos. It's more than just words that we speak. It's our basic integrity. It's our individuality. It is our soul. The creative word of God is a gift of the Spirit that's inherent within each of us. And because each of us is a thought in God's mind, each of us is an idea in God's mind, we are God or Spirit thinking of itself in a certain particular way. And so that is our individuality, that is our diversity within unity. And because we are unique and individualized within this concept of the one creative force, again, the Word, it is our responsibility to share our gifts. And we do that in a number of ways, but in particular by sharing with our words and communicating that which we are, that which we want to express. Well, it sounds sort of easy, doesn't it? I have a gift, we all have a gift, and when we focus on that gift, which is not just like one birthday present, it's a gift that has many, many facets and applications, our responsibility becomes clear. We share that gift. We have the gift, we share the gift. We know what the gift is because we know who we are. What's the problem? What could be easier? Well, Here's a problem. There are many voices within our consciousness that speak to us. And some of them, or at least one of a group, represents itself as our inner critic, or the police person of our consciousness, or the superego, as Freud referred to it. Plato also talked about this police person that talks to us and tells us what is right, what is wrong, what is safe, what isn't safe. It's very judgmental. It's not always the wisest source of information, but it wants to keep us safe. Our inner critic wants to keep us safe by making sure we never go outside our comfort zone or never risk anything for fear of being ostracized. Okay. So when we have a voice like that in our consciousness and we say, I want to express myself as this, or this is where I'm coming from, or this is how I feel, or this is my gift that I want to share with the world, the voice of the critic will probably come in and say, I don't know if that's safe. If we want to share our honesty with people, the voice will say, you might get into trouble. It probably won't work. Just say something that's safe. Now, let me ask you before I go on, can anyone relate to this?
Yes.
Is there anybody that doesn't relate to this? I mean, because we all have this voice. What we don't realize is that this voice is an adult version of all the voices that we heard when we were little children. The voice that helps us socialize. Don't take a risk. Don't go out in traffic. Don't eat that. It's not safe. Don't do this. Don't do that. And so over the years, we're used to hearing the word don't in relation to our safety. What the voice in our own consciousness doesn't realize is that when we grow into adulthood, the rules change. You know, we don't have to listen that literally to everything that's being said. We've managed to grow up, you know, through the efforts largely of that voice. We haven't walked into traffic, you know, we haven't drunk poison by mistake, you know, we haven't done those things, and so here we are. But it's as though emotionally we never matured beyond the place where we needed to have a voice telling us that's not really safe. So what do? We tell, as the term has been popular over the years, little white lies. There was a TV commercial about that a while back, and it's Mary Todd Lincoln and Abe Lincoln in this commercial. I don't honestly remember the product, but it was such a great commercial. Mary Todd Lincoln, as we have seen in photographs and pictures of her throughout the years, was a rather stout woman. And they wore all these dresses that just, you could barely get through the door with all the crinolines and hoops with these dresses. Anyway, she walks in the room and she says to her husband, "Do I look fat in this?" And he looks at the camera because, after all, his nickname was, what? Honest Abe. And so now he has this hideous dilemma. The woman herself obviously has not gotten to the point where she's accepted herself as she is. And no matter how heavy or thin we are, we have beauty. All of those things are a matter of culture and fashion and the times. They don't mean anything. If you're thin, you're thin. There's beauty in that. If you're heavy, you're heavy. There's beauty in that. But in this case, she was, you know, a bit ego-driven there, you know, and trying to get a compliment out of her husband. And he was extremely frustrated because although he had a reputation for being impeccable with his word, this was a place that might provide some unwanted consequences if he were to share the truth. So we get used to doing that. How's this? Great. Okay, well, if you like my dress or if you like what I'm wearing, then I must be lovable. I must be good. I must have passed the test that I need to pass. Because if anyone were to say, I don't know if that's your best effort. I don't know if that's something, or that's something that really doesn't appeal to me, but that's just the way I feel. Then, I mean, the consequences sometimes are just too heavy to bear, don't you think? I mean, we risk people saying, well, I wanted to wear this. I thought it was my best. I thought it was beautiful. I wanted you to like it. I really cared. And it's like, yeah, okay. Let me turn that around and say, you know what, it's gorgeous. I had something in my eye before, I wasn't seeing clearly, but you look fantastic. We make it tough on each other because we don't recognize our own inner beauty. We don't recognize and honor the truth of who we are, and we walk around trying to get approval from others, whether they want to give it or not. And so we feel stuck because we know when we're not being truthful. And so many times we say, what difference does it make? Really, what difference does it make? Let's just keep the peace. But are we keeping the peace, or are we just allowing some sort of untruth to permeate our consciousness? We are letting that inner critic, that inner voice, tell us what's safe to say and what's not safe to say. Well, some of us rebel against that voice. Some of us feel trapped, especially those of us who are more extroverted or more assertive than those who are more introverted. And so, for example, someone like myself, over the years, I can do that for various periods of time until something inside of me says, Leona, you crave to be authentic. There's a craving inside of me that I experience. Have you ever had that? It's a craving, because the reality is being impeccable with our word helps us be connected to our highest self. Being honest, being truthful, being able to express our own opinion, feeling free enough to be exactly who we were created to be, couched in a civil, verbal approach. In other words, we don't say, when someone says, how does this look? We don't say, oh my God, how could you put on something like that? It's hideous. No, we don't do that, because that's not being impeccable with our word either. That's being overly critical and unkind, and it's not something we would want to hear ourselves, so naturally we wouldn't want to speak our word that way. But sometimes just to be able to say that doesn't work for me sends people into a hideous place of emotional insecurity. Let us be a gift to the world by allowing ourselves to speak our truth and allowing others to speak their truth by not penalizing them with our hurt feelings or our anger and making the thing so much bigger than it needed to be. It was an interesting and kind of sad but important time for me when I went from professional theater into the ministry, and then while I was in the ministry, and still am, of course, I started working with singers who wanted to perform. And then when I got here, we opened up Unity Community Theater and Unity Children's Theater, and I was working with a lot of people who really didn't get the drill as I had been raised to get in show business. The drill was this: they cast you in the part, they think you must be good enough to do it. Now they're gonna tell you, and they're gonna pick and pick and pick at what isn't your best performance. They always believe in you, they always think you're wonderful, but they're gonna pick. Well, just because I was raised that way to understand that, and to even say thank you when I got feedback, constructive criticism, whatever kind of criticism it was, I was raised to know that that criticism was designed to help me go out in front of people and do my very best. But when I got into the ministry and were casting people who had never worked in theater before and didn't really know those rules, just because I explained it didn't mean that it was integrated really well. And there were times when I was confused, shocked, amazed that I would give feedback to a person and they would crumble emotionally. Crumble. Oh my God, that's not what I wanted to do. That wasn't the way we played that game. The way we played that game was, I say, no, the other foot, or please move over here, or we're going to change this, or we're going to do it this way. And, you know, we go ahead and do it for the good of the show. So many people didn't respond that way. So many people understood that it was all for the greater good. But for some, it was devastating to hear that they were that hurt and felt abused by a stage correction. So, first of all, before we have the guts to be impeccable with our word, let us have the guts to honor who we are and recognize that nothing should be able to hurt us to that degree where we lash out at the person giving the feedback and become destroyed emotionally and feel that we're no good. As a Unity minister, that's very painful for me. Very painful, because even in spiritual counseling where you give feedback, there are people who are not ready to hear it. And so in counseling, I think many of us who do this work realize that there are boundaries, that people aren't ready to hear things that ostensibly they're coming to hear, and no matter how sweetly and lovingly you phrase it, they're gonna be hurt by it. When I say they, I mean us. I'm not talking about anybody else. I'm talking about a trend in human nature. As a rule, we might be a little too fragile. And because of that fragility, because of that immaturity, we're not allowing others to be impeccable with their word because we just feel too fragile to take it. So here this morning, I affirm with you, everyone whom I'm seeing and everyone who is on live stream, you are enough. You are more than enough. You were created to be more than enough. You're enough. Let's not bring it up in conversation. Let's not let it sully the level of conversation that we have. Let's just know that we're here to exchange information. If we don't like what someone says, we can always let it go. If we don't like it, it just, someone's individual taste was not aligned with ours. That's basically it. Personally, not only in our own social lives and as souls who are growing into greater and greater realization of our oneness, it would do us really well to get that if we're discussing politics or if we're discussing religion. I mean, we've got evidence in the world today as we look at it that people can't hear, don't want to hear, feel too fragile to hear or unwilling to hear, or feel that we have too many enemies out there to be able to hear. And how will we ever get to the point of compromise when someone's word is something that we're afraid of or we have anger toward even before they speak? Being impeccable with our word asks us, calls upon us to say what we mean, again, being couched with socially appropriate terminology, And when we do, to feel that sense of freedom that comes with when our inside matches our outside. When we are able to relax in our environment and not be so afraid that somebody's going to do this in it, then they do that, then I do this, and by that time the moment has passed, we're not too happy with ourselves because we didn't get to be who we were created to be, and we feel insecure about whether our opinion matters, and that's not the way. It's just not that big a deal, you know? It's not that big a deal to remember that we are wiser, smarter, more loving, more capable than we believe ourselves to be. We're no longer the children whose parents have to grab us and say, don't get into trouble, like the critic does, because maybe, just maybe, and I think there's a big chance of this, that when we are impeccable with our word, our relationships can prosper and be blessed. Our sense of individuality, our respect for ourselves and one another can be enhanced. And all in all, when we are honest based on who we are, and let's remember, when we do give our feedback, this isn't the be-all and end-all. I mean, I can say, gee, Stravinsky wrote a piece that just really doesn't resonate with me. I know the guy is famous. I know that his music is legendary around the world. It didn't resonate with me. That doesn't mean he shouldn't be playing music. It just means that that's my opinion based on my culture, based on my level of sensitivity, based on my taste. So let us allow ourselves and others to share in a way that comes from the highest level within us, who we are, what we believe, and allow others to do the same without diminishing. Remember, just because I speak a certain word or you speak a certain word doesn't mean that it's the be-all and end-all truth that everybody believes. So that is really, really important. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or gossip about others. Well, why would we gossip about others if we really liked ourselves? Why would we be so quick to point out other people's perceived flaws if we didn't point out our own, again, the inner critic, and the words? Oh, Leona, you were so stupid. Oh, that was so wrong. That was so bad. That was so ineffective. Why? You knew better. You should have done better. And on and on and on. Is this what Spirit intended when it thought us into creation? No, it's not what Spirit intended when it thought us into creation. We made a mistake. We made a mistake. We made a blunder, we made a blunder. It doesn't mean that's because we're a bad person or because we're stupid or because it doesn't mean any of those things. It just is a piece of information that will help us in the future. I didn't do this well. Okay, it happens. I'm sorry it happened. I wish it wouldn't have happened, but it did. And so let me just learn from this and move on. That's it, as far as self-criticism. That's it. No name calling, okay? And of course, the more we're able to accept ourselves, the more able we are to understand and accept others as well. Always use the power of the word as we do in affirmative prayer in the direction of truth and love. Now, don't take anything personally. Exactly. Nothing others do is because of you, okay? What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. Again, very, very closely related to what we've been talking about in the first agreement. I am coming from my own consciousness. I prefer certain types of music, certain colors, certain places to be. I prefer it because that is part of my individuality. I can't always have my way in terms of the music I listen to or the situations I'm placed in, but I have an opinion because I'm coming from an individualized perspective. I either resonate to loud music, or I resonate to soft music, or I resonate to this style, or I don't resonate to this style. This is always about me. It's always about me, where I'm coming from. And very simply, when you're in a dark corner of the room, and you say to the host, you know, it's really, really dark in here, without realizing that there's a fluorescent light right over here in the next area. You know, it's dark in here to me because I'm in that dark corner. What you do about it, you see, depends on how you understand that it's my perspective. I go into a restaurant. Most people like overhead fans. I don't like overhead fans. It kind of makes me nervous when the air kind of blows at me. It doesn't mean people shouldn't have overhead fans. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the restaurant. I don't particularly like it. So when I ask for a fan to be turned off, if they can't, then they're more than willing to seat me somewhere else because I'm not speaking for the whole environment. I'm only speaking for my particular place at that particular time with my own level of growth and considering what circumstances have gone on in my life that causes me to feel either more benevolent or less at that moment. If I remember that, then I can understand that when another person speaks to me and says, I don't like this, it didn't resonate with me, I can understand that they're speaking from what they know and believe. I can honor that without falling over and having a nervous breakdown and changing my occupation and doing all kinds of things. See how related these two things are. We need to know who we are. Who we are is valid, but it's specific, it's opinionated. When we get too opinionated, then, you know, we've overused a particular skill. But we need to remember at all times that people are coming to us from their perspective. And honestly, there is no way for any of us to know what is best for someone. There's no way for us to know that because we're coming from the place where we know what's best for us and what we would resonate to. And so that's another reason why, as I've spoken about so many times, we need to remember that what we're looking for is within us. We can go to 3 different sages or mystics and they can have a different point of view. And we have to own and honor our own integrity, our own ability to speak the word, to listen to input from others. There are times when people, we, I, you, will say things carelessly, and they do wound. And I'm not suggesting that they don't or shouldn't. But I am suggesting that as quickly as we can, we take that arrow out, put it down, bless the pain, and say, that is their perspective. It does not and cannot diminish me. I'm an expression of spirit. I am here by divine appointment. Is there anything in there, however, that I can use? Because some of the worst feedback, you know, some of the most inappropriate feedback contains sometimes a grain of something that I can use. Maybe I don't like the way it was presented, but I can do something if I can hear it in the guise of something that will benefit and bless me. So, be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Let us honor these ideas at a deeper level, actually, than I've ever presented them, because I kind of like to do the 4, now 5 agreements, a couple of times a year. They're so rich with mystical wisdom, so rich and so important and so powerful. Our takeaway today is remember who you are. Remember what power you have. Remember how to use that power wisely, and how to understand that at any given time we can be misunderstood, we can misunderstand others, but the minute we feel that we've been hurt or wounded, let us embrace our divine individuality with love, knowing that we can't please everybody, nor should we even have that as part of our agenda. Knowing that if we do make mistakes, we didn't mean to hurt anybody. We meant to help them, but we couldn't possibly have the last word because we're a piece of the pie and we really can't see the whole picture. So, are you with me on this? This is a week to honor and bless our own divine individuality as we integrate those 2 agreements into our everyday experience. Okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so it is.